Versatile Mage. Chapter 116 Saving Xinxia. Mo Fan stood inside the half of the control room left, looking past through the charred remains. The entire plaza could be seen in plain sight. A few one-eyed magic wolves were roaming around the plaza. It clearly looked like they hadn't found the food they were looking for before a huge bang was heard, and all of their focus was fixed on the hole that had suddenly appeared. One of the smaller one-eyed magic wolves watched those 6 nearly dead black beasts. It was frightened as it looked over to its comrade. Instead, its comrade looked at the human that was standing near the edge of the gigantic black hole, and its whole body shivered unwillingly. When both eyes of the beasts met, those 2 one-eyed magic wolves ran away in panic from Mingwen Plaza. It was easy to imagine that these 2 one-eyed magic wolves' thoughts were shattered, thinking inside that they were lucky. Holy shit, lucky we didn't go that way. Watching those 2 fleeing one-eyed magic wolves, Mo Fan was still in a boiling state. This is the intermediate class of fire element. This is the intermediate class of fire element. This is magic. This is real magic. The beginner's magic we learned was so weak compared to this. Damn you, Ang, that fucking Black Vatican dog, is still thinking of killing your grandpa, Mo Fan. Shit, I can't reveal any more. Xinxia is still in danger. Mo Fan belatedly noticed this important matter and stopped caring about those dying black beasts. He darted towards the Walmart at once. After reaching Intermediate Magician, Mo Fan felt that his own body had a noticeable change. He ran to the railing and simply jumped down from the 3rd floor. Landing, both his legs were quite stable. Mo Fan didn't dare to waste another second, darting towards the Walmart. Normally, Mo Fan would take the time to think about how to deal with those 2 giant-eyed ape rats wandering around the Walmart. But now, one ignite immediately blew away the iron door of Walmart. Who cared how many giant-eyed ape rats were in the store? Mo Fan rushed in, looking through the rows and rows of shelves, rapidly locking on and running toward the freezer on the monitoring screen. Mo Fan was running frantically before coming into a semi-spacious cargo channel. At this moment, those 2 giant-eyed ape rats peeked out after they heard a movement. When they saw a living human, those 2 giant-eyed ape rats began to make an excited sound. They moved onto the long shopping walkway and jumped towards Mo Fan. The giant-eyed ape rats were fast, their huge front teeth gaped wide in the air. Go die. Fire fist. Below his foot, a drawing of fire element energy was glowing brightly. The fire rapidly condensed around Mo Fan's wrists and held tightly around his right fist. Pang, pang, pang. Upon releasing the fire punch, the shelves on both sides of the aisle burned down to ash under its power. The 2 giant-eyed ape rats could only regret that they were already halfway in their charge towards him. Were they blind? Didn't they recognize that this was an intermediate-class human magician? That giant rampaging fire punch couldn't be endured by their weak bodies. The raging fire engulfed them, turning them into ash, all in the blink of an eye. Mo Fan controlled his release just a little. After successfully killing the 2 giant-eyed ape rats, he withdrew the power of his fire fist, or else if it kept going the explosive power would set the Walmart ablaze. If it hurt Xinxia, that would be such a great crime. Xinxia, Xinxia. Mo Fan didn't even bother looking at the ashes, impatiently heading towards the end of the freezer section. The wheelchair in front of him, that giant freezer, also reached his sight. Mo Fan rushed to the front of the freezer. Inside the freezer, Xinxia was lying there like a sleeping beauty. Her skin was originally fair, but now it was a scarily pale white. Her peaceful face didn't have any sign of color. Both of her eyes were tightly shut. Her long eyebrows had a little frost on them. It looked like a frozen tear. Mo Fan hurriedly carried her out, but only felt that freezing cold death. Xinxia. Mo Fan felt like he was hit by a thunderbolt. Wake up. Wake up. I'm Mo Fan. I'm Mo Fan. I'm here to save you. The fire from Mo Fan's body began to burn. He held the petite body of Xinxia in his arms, hoping that the flames could help the frozen Xinxia awaken. Heat constantly transferred, swiftly clearing away the frost that tried to take a girl's life. Her body started to slowly warm up. Her almost stagnant breath was also starting to follow along, opening her heavy eyes, one very warm body holding her tightly. Yi Xin-chia felt that the warmth was something she never experienced, but also that it was very familiar. Brother Mo Fan. Yi Xin-chia's voice was so weak that it almost couldn't be heard, and she couldn't believe that it was him. Some said that before a person died, they would have illusions. Yi Xin-chia was scared that this was the last flare of happiness that a girl selling matchsticks would see. But being held tightly felt so real. Mo Fan heard a sound. He then realized it was Yi Xin-chia who had opened her eyes and was talking gibberish. In front of a disaster, everybody's lives were so weak. Mo Fan had already seen so many girls die during this disaster. He was so afraid that this would happen to Yi Xin-chia too. After all, other people had the ability to run away, but what about her? Mo Fan came here unfaltered. He knew that Yi Xin-chia was crippled and definitely would be abandoned in a place somewhere, helplessly waiting for death. Brother Mo Fan, I thought I would never see you again. Yi Xin-chia's heart was melted away. Her soft arms hugged Mo Fan tight unconsciously, as if she was not willing to let go, wishing that she could melt into Mo Fan's warm body. How could I leave you alone and not care for you? Mo Fan replied, his voice cracking. Yi Xin-chia didn't reply, only hugged him tighter. The whole world could abandon her, but Mo Fan definitely would not. Knowing this fact, she now had no doubt of it. When the calamity broke out, and she had been left alone in the cold underground supermarket, Yi Xin-chia had not shed any tears. Only when Mo Fan really showed up in front of her did the tears start to shower down uncontrollably. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 117. The Miraculous Healing Element. After he put Yi Xingxia on her wheelchair, Mo Fan suddenly felt dizzy. As Yi Xingxia realized this, she asked, "What's wrong?" "Don't worry, I'm just a little dizzy," Mo Fan replied, his head spinning a bit. Thinking of it, ever since he left the underground holy spring, he hadn't had any rest. There were so many wounds on his body which he hadn't taken care of, and his mental focus was also exhausted. He wanted to take Yi Xingxia and leave this place. However, in his current state, he was no longer able to use intermediate magic, which required a large amount of magic energy. This worried Mo Fan considerably. "Your arm is bleeding profusely. You have lost too much blood." Yi Xingxia quickly discovered the astonishing wound on Mo Fan's arm. That wound was casually wrapped with a cloth. However, it hadn't stopped the bleeding. "Oh. When I was dealing with the Black Beast monsters before," Mo Fan only now realized this, and his wound was fairly painful. "Put it here." Yi Xingxia put Mo Fan's wounded arm on her thighs. Even with her silk skirt in between them, Mo Fan could still feel Yi Xingxia's smooth thighs. As his wrist accidentally touched them, her beautiful legs revealed a shocking elasticity. The pain and blood loss was soon put to the back of his mind. Yi Xingxia's thighs didn't have any scars, nor did they seem misshapen or withered. When she was sitting down, she looked the same as any other girl. Furthermore, with her wearing a skirt, she possessed the beauty of a delicate piece of art, and a natural snowy white skin. Her jade-like radiance was at a level that completely infatuated others. Perhaps her two legs were too beautiful, and that was why the heavens had taken away her most important thing. No strength. Her two legs didn't have any bit of strength. She was able to walk, but only a few steps before she would begin to gasp for air. It wasn't that she didn't regularly see any doctors, but even they couldn't do anything about her problem. The more expensive hospitals were not something they could afford, so they could only delay this matter. As Mo Fan was enjoying this special treatment, a bizarre energy slowly emerged from Yi Xingxia's body. A pure white light appeared on Yi Xingxia's delicate fingertips. They blossomed with a distinctive luster, similar to water, flowing gently. These pure white lights slowly gathered within Yi Xingxia's small palms. She closed her beautiful eyes as she put her hand on Mo Fan's large wound. An itchy feeling quickly came through. Mo Fan saw his wound on his arm being slowly healed by the white light. They were just like a group of active, living spirits as they gathered on Mo Fan's injured flesh and reconnected his severed veins. While healing Mo Fan, she was able to maintain her energy. As Mo Fan saw this, he felt a bit astonished. The cut on his arm was healing at a visible speed. The gash around his elbow also began to heal, followed by the one on his shoulder also slowly mending itself. This kind of feeling, if you were to view the wound like a zipper, then healing was like someone slowly pulling the zipper up. Furthermore, the wound was no longer visible after the zipper was pulled up, leaving behind intact flesh. This was the healing element. This was the ability of the healing element. Mo Fan was filled with disbelief as he looked at Yi Xingxia, who had her eyes closed. Looking at her fully concentrating, his heart began to feel waves of astonishment. He had nearly forgotten that Xingxia was a healing elemental magician, the first person in the entirety of Bo City who had gotten this element on their first awakening. The vast majority of people awakened a classical element on their first awakening: wind, fire, water, ice, lightning, light, or earth. However, there were bound to be exceptions amongst humans. Other than the classical elements that were awakened on their first try, there was also white magic, black magic, and dimensional magic. The healing element belonged to white magic. Normally, you would only be able to find intermediate magicians who possessed healing magic. People like Yi Xingxia who awakened it on their first awakening were extremely rare. Beneath the warm glow of healing, his drowsy feeling from before had also vanished. It was clear that other than restoring his wounds, healing was also able to replenish lost blood to a certain degree. This event caused Mo Fan to be extremely happy. He never thought that his precious little Xingxia would have such an incomparable ability. If she was brought to the safety shelters, then Yi Xingxia would instantly become a very important person. After all, there was not a single medicine or method that could possibly be better than Yi Xingxia's ability to heal wounds. Xingxia, how strong is the effect of your healing? If you were to use healing right after someone had their throat severed, would you be able to save them? Mo Fan asked excitedly. Yi Xingxia shook her head. Healing is useless if your life is taken instantly. Oh, this is already very impressive. Mo Fan nodded. The veteran hunters, those who frequently fought magical beasts out in the wild, knew something. What truly killed you was not necessarily the attacks of a magical beast, but the accumulated wounds on your body. Wounds could bleed, get infected, worsen, and if you didn't get your wounds checked in time, then it was the equivalent of your life chipping away. Other than rations and water, the large majority of the veterans would bring medicine. Unfortunately, the effects of the medicine were far too slow, and were unable to keep up with the veterans who were always battling. If the squad had a healing magician, then this would no longer be a problem. Sometimes, it would be even more useful than defensive magic equipment. It would also substantially decrease the mortality rate of the squads, especially the squads that went on long and difficult treks. Are there any other wounds? Yi Xingxia cautiously inspected Mo Fan. Her small hand swept past Mo Fan's flesh without even touching his skin. The small wounds on his body instantly healed, including the bruises, bumps, and splash wounds. This miraculous event made Mo Fan also want this type of ability. Not long after, Mo Fan was completely healed. Despite the ragged clothes on his body, there were no bruises to be seen, and even his scars had completely disappeared. Haha, so it turns out my Xingxia is this amazing. Say, how about we start a clinic for removing scars? Who knows how much money we would be able to make? Mo Fan couldn't help but say this. Yi Xingxia gave him a supercilious look. Mo Fan also felt that he was being a bit immature. In any case, they were both divine magicians now. With his wounds no longer a burden, Mo Fan felt very comfortable. After gathering his spirit, Mo Fan pleasantly discovered the magic energy within his nebula had also restored itself a little. In this case, it meant he was still able to use intermediate level magic, and that would mean the magical beasts wouldn't be able to stop him. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 118. Warriors of Bow City. After pushing Xinxia out of the shopping mall in her wheelchair, Mo Fan saw the few remaining black beasts crawling around in pain. The corpses of 3 of them were in many parts, looking as though they had been ripped apart by other creatures. Fortunately, the ones that survived the fall were able to jump to another location. However, these kinds of magical beasts that had sustained great damage were even tastier than humans to other magical beasts. They would probably be eaten if they tried to walk away. Outside the city, magical beasts would attempt to kill each other. This was because a magical beast's body emitted energy similar to a magic stone. For this reason, many magical beasts fought to the death to obtain the carcass of a higher level creature. We have to get to the Jiame highway. That way, it will be much safer for us to reach the safety shelters, Mo Fan told Xinxia. Xinxia nodded, though her face displayed a trace of worry. Mo Fan smiled slightly. Don't worry, we won't encounter any magical beasts. Xinxia looked at Mo Fan in confusion. This area was clearly surrounded by magical beasts, so why did he say they wouldn't encounter any? Weren't those words of comfort a bit too far-fetched? Mo Fan pushed Xinxia along the avenue. Sometimes he walked, sometimes stopped, sometimes suddenly increased their speed, and other times found a place to hide. His seemingly strange actions allowed him to avoid wandering magical beasts. This made Xinxia think someone was giving Mo Fan directions via satellite. As they continued walking, they encountered no major problems. Occasionally, a few magical beasts appeared, but they seemed frightened by something and quickly left. Seeing this, Xinxia couldn't help but ask, "Brother Mo Fan, why does it look like they're actually afraid of you?" Indeed, even when these wandering magical beasts saw them, they intentionally avoided the pair. This was not typical for magical beasts, who usually attacked anything they encountered. Furthermore, Xinxia noticed traces of fear in their eyes. That's because they aren't stupid. They can sense that I'm stronger from the aura emitted from my body, Mo Fan replied with a smile. Your aura is stronger than theirs. Xinxia thought for a moment before realizing the truth. Her pretty face lit up with an emotional smile. Brother Mo Fan, you're already an intermediate magician. That's right, ha ha ha. If these little magical beasts don't form a group, they'd be sending themselves to die. Mo Fan grinned. The difference between a primary and an intermediate magician was like heaven and earth. Before, Mo Fan advanced cautiously to avoid alarming magical beasts. Now, he could walk openly, and they wouldn't dare act against him. In truth, Mo Fan had not fully completed his intermediate magic training. He could cast intermediate magic only because of the 4-star Atlas books given to him by Tang Yu. He had already used 2, and held the remaining 2. This meant he could only use intermediate magic twice more, and the consumption of magic energy was high. I see. In that case, Brother Mo Fan's perception has also gotten stronger. Xinxia asked happily. Yes, I can sense any activity of magical beasts nearby, even 2 streets away, Mo Fan confirmed. Intermediate magicians possessed strong perception, allowing them to detect nearby activity and sense energy fluctuations. If someone tried a sneak attack, they would be detected instantly, allowing for a quick counter. Xinxia's joy showed on her rosy face, making her extremely adorable and tempting Mo Fan to kiss her. But before she could speak again, Mo Fan suddenly frowned, his expression turning solemn. What's wrong? Xinxia whispered. Shit. Don't tell me a group of magical beasts is coming for me. Let's hide first. Mo Fan cursed. He hurriedly pushed Xinxia toward a building. Without listening to her protest, he carried her and ran to the top. Normally, he might enjoy the closeness, but now he focused entirely on the danger, sensing a large group of fast-moving magical beasts nearby. By the time they reached inside the building, a rumbling noise came from the distant streets. Mo Fan carried Xinxia up to the 5th floor and looked out the window, An uncountable number of magical beasts filled the street, one-eyed magic wolves, colossal-eyed ape rats, and more, like a living tide chasing something. Xinxia held her breath, sensing their overwhelming aura. Even with Mo Fan's intermediate power, they would be swallowed if discovered. It's the instructors. Mo Fan spotted a group running frantically. Instructor Luo Yunbo using Wind Trail to carry Pan Lijin, and another battle mage fleeing alongside Hunter Squad Captain Zhu Dawang. From his position, Mo Fan saw Mingwen Girls' Middle School had partially collapsed, especially near the cafeteria, which was now just a large crater. They succeeded, Mo Fan exclaimed. Destroying the magical beast entrance meant Bo City might be saved. But Officer Cheng was nowhere to be seen. Only these four remained, and they were being surrounded fast. They all died, Mo Fan muttered, his face heavy. Even Officer Cheng, an intermediate magician, hadn't survived. Xinxia, let's go to the roof, Mo Fan said, determination in his voice. They were the warriors of Bo City. He couldn't just watch them die. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 119. A fist dropping from the heavens. As evening approached, Bo City was still shrouded in a dim layer of mist. Usually, there would be shining lights in Bo City around this time. Now, other than the misty drizzle within the dull gray streets, there were non-stop growls and roars to live in, or just a hunting ground for magical beasts. In Mingwen, corpses lay everywhere, making escape seem impossible. Every second, people were being dragged from their hiding places, quickly becoming food for the invading magical beasts. As the sunset left a faint ray of light through the dark night, hordes of magical beasts rampaged through the streets. They were furious. A group of cursed humans had destroyed the precious passageway. Many magical beasts had yet to taste the gourmet dish called humans, but their entrance into the city was destroyed before they could fully conquer the place. The beasts nearby were enraged, frantically hunting the humans who destroyed the passageway. They would not retreat, even if an intermediate magician stood among the humans. That relatively powerful human had already been killed, leaving only 4 people fleeing like rats. Yunbo, forget it. We can't run anymore, Pan Lijin said sadly, looking at Luo Yunbo, who was using all his energy to flee. Her expression was resigned. She had been prepared to never return the moment she joined the mission squad. With the entry tunnel destroyed and Officer Cheng sacrificed, how could mere primary magicians escape the magical beast's pursuit? What stupid talk. Their speed can't match mine. Believe me, we'll escape. Luo Yunbo cursed. He hadn't given up. Officers were not fearless, but they were more resolute than common people. They would not hesitate to sacrifice themselves if necessary. The mission was complete. Officer Cheng used his last magic to open a path for them, hoping they wouldn't give up. Life was precious. Tens of thousands had already died in Bo City. Luo Yunbo had grown up here. He didn't want to see more casualties. Above all, he didn't want Pan Lijin to fall into the jaws of the magical beasts. He wanted to live, to see Boss Zhangkong return gloriously with the Darkwing Wolf's head, to see every magical beast banished from Bo City, to see the city restored to its peaceful days without shrieks and cries. Luo Yunbo would not die here, nor would he allow Pan Lijin to give up. Ah woo, ah woo. Suddenly, 6 one-eyed magic wolves blocked their escape at the intersection ahead. On this long road, there was no other way out. Hundreds of magical beasts were chasing behind them, and the 2 of them couldn't push through with their limited strength. Now, 6 wolves stood in front, called by their packmates to block the route. Pan Lijin showed traces of relief. She no longer wanted to struggle. Death was inevitable, and she saw no point in living alone in this world. Luo Yunbo was not resigned to his fate. Even with hundreds of magical beasts chasing him, they would never catch up, unless a warrior-class magical beast appeared. If not for the wolves, they might have escaped. But these 6 blocked the way completely. I won't give up. If I were just a little stronger, this would have ended differently, Luo Yunbo thought. Scanning his surroundings for a chance at survival, he found nothing, until he noticed a glow of flames on the roof of a nearby building. Burn! In the dark night, a fire like a falling meteor dazzled Luo Yunbo's eyes, brimming with the aura of destruction. That fist could only be his, the great Mo Fan's, fiery fist. Day and night seemed to meet at this moment. From the rooftop, a fiery blaze illuminated the shadowed streets. Covered in flames, Mo Fan stood at the corner of the roof like a crazed blaze demon. The fire blazed against the dark sky, waves of heat slapping the air. The temperature neared combustion. As Mo Fan unleashed his fiery fist, a gigantic burning fist broke through the night, resisting the darkness itself. The fist evolved into a burning meteor, beautifully streaking past buildings toward the crossroad. Pang, pang, pang. The destructive flames descended like a giant's punch. The 6 greedy wolves never imagined that fire would fall from the sky. Flustered, they tried to flee, but it was too late. They were engulfed in the flames. When the meteor struck, a massive crater formed. The 6 wolves blocking Luo Yunbo and Pan Lijin were reduced to ash. A few survivors fled pitifully. Luo Yunbo and Pan Lijin were stunned. It was like a blessing from the heavens. A fist of flames had saved them just as they stepped into the gates of hell. Luo Yunbo reacted quickly, casting Wind Trail to flee with Pan Lijin. Passing the fiery crater, he glanced back toward the rooftop where the flames originated. The shadow in the flames. Why did it look like Mo Fan, who had gone off to find his relative? Could he be mistaken? Pan Lijin also looked back, astonished that a miracle had occurred. This mysterious man on the rooftop had saved them. Who was he? Were there still hidden experts in Bo City? And why had he chosen to save them? When the flame's glow faded, darkness returned to the district. Xinxia sat quietly on the rooftop, her elegance swaying with the lingering heatwaves. The scene was like a living work of art. Her beautiful face, however, could not hide her astonishment. Her eyes were fixed on Mo Fan's shadow. Even knowing he had reached the intermediate level, Xinxia felt his entire presence had changed. The overbearing flame aura surrounding him as he unleashed the fiery fist was unlike anything she had seen. To her, Mo Fan had always been a warm-hearted rogue who shared silly thoughts with her. It was hard to imagine him wielding such solemn, absolute power. Mo Fan turned, realizing her gaze had never left his face. With a bashful grin, he asked, "Didn't I look cool?" Only then did Xinxia realize how silly she must have seemed staring at him. Her face flushed bright red as she quickly looked away, unable to meet his eyes. At that moment, Xinxia finally understood what it meant to have butterflies in her stomach. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 120. Moving Locations. Mo Fan also wanted to help Zhu Dawang's group. However, he was too far away from them. His fiery fist couldn't possibly reach that far. Also, Zhu Dawang's party was surrounded by magical beasts. Whether they could survive or not was still uncertain. After finishing his moves, Mo Fan lifted Xinxia up and quickly fled the building. Those magical beasts weren't blind, and having been so flagrantly disturbed, they wouldn't give up. Even if you were an intermediate class magician, they would still chase you. Intermediate class magicians were strong, capable of instantly killing a magical beast if their skills were perfected. But if there were many beasts, their sheer numbers could also take down a magician. Furthermore, if the beasts couldn't kill a magician, they could always cry out to their leaders. The general class magic beasts would never fear an intermediate magician. As expected, not long after Mo Fan used his skill, the whole building was surrounded by dozens of magic beasts, with many more on their way. Luckily, Mo Fan had fled quickly along with Yi Xinxia. If not, he would have paid with his life after saving her. Mo Fan now had only one star map book left. Unless those dozens of magic beasts were obedient, and stupid, enough to group themselves into a neat circle for him to hit them all with a fire fist, one intermediate class magician was certainly not enough to kill them all. Mo Fan quit while he was ahead, fleeing as fast as he could. Not long after, Mo Fan arrived at the Jiamei Bridge. At the bridge, there was still a dark motorcycle left by the military. If they didn't meet a general-class magical beast, they could basically reach the safety shelter safely. The night was getting darker, and a fierce wind whistled in their ears. The night was black as a panther and blended into the dreary view. From Jiamei Bridge, it was easy to see Bo City covered in darkness. From time to time, bright magic spells could be seen from certain streets, and growls could be heard coming from the buildings. After so many decades of peaceful times, who would have thought such a catastrophe would fall upon this city? Or was this proof that the world was never truly peaceful, and war could always happen? It was completely different from the world Mo Fan was born in. There, humans were always starting wars with other humans. Here, it was hard for humans and magical beasts to live together. Mo Fan didn't know if Bo City would survive the next dawn, or if the magicians would be able to fully drive the magical beasts out. He could only follow his own beliefs while Xingxia hid, now in deep sleep, in his arms. When Zhang Xiaohao cried out, "I must make myself stronger," Mo Fan felt it too. He was lucky because the person he cared for most didn't die in this catastrophe, but he knew he wouldn't be lucky forever. If he had arrived at the freezer and found Xingxia's ice-cold corpse, he would have blamed himself his whole life. Why didn't he become stronger? Xingxia, we're nearly there. Mo Fan's eyes were set on the safety shelter. Along the way, the butterflies inside him still had not settled. Xingxia took a deep breath. The feeling of being alive felt so good. I heard there's a one-winged magic item. If your legs still aren't healed, I'll make you into a fairy, Mo Fan said. It's very expensive. Doesn't matter if it's expensive. You're a brother. I am good at earning money. I can even buy you different styles. Bird type, butterfly type, fairy type, monster wing type. That's disgusting, doesn't fit our pretty style. Finally arriving back at the safety shelter, the rest of the night quietly passed. At daybreak, the clouds were overcome by the sunrise, and bright rays trickled down to the hills, rivers, and city. Mo Fan was half leaning against a wall, hazily opening his eyes. He could hear people cheering but didn't know why. After seeing the snow-white sky eagles coming from the direction of the sun, Mo Fan couldn't help but grow excited. They were reinforcements. Reinforcements had finally arrived. One big group of sky eagles, each one equivalent to an intermediate-class magician. This southern city had faced disaster so suddenly, and on top of that, Bo City's location was relatively remote. If the military called for backup, it would normally take time. But from the look of this wing of sky eagles, the higher-ups must be furious. Otherwise, why would they transfer such elite sky eagle magician troops? Intermediate-class magicians in Bo City were limited. The 9 Sky Eagle troops under boss San Kong were all fighting alongside him against the Darkwing Wolf. Whether they were dead or alive, Mo Fan didn't know. It was hard to have enough intermediate-class magicians to fight those murderous magical beasts again, especially with that general-class creature, like a living nightmare. The army troops on Sky Eagles swiftly flew over Bo City and landed on the watchtower. Watching each high and grand white eagle land, and seeing the aura of those military magicians, Mo Fan knew Bo City would finally be defended. The purpose of the Sky Eagle team was simple: to hunt and kill the general-class beast roaming the city. Once the general-class beast was dealt with, the servant-class monsters couldn't withstand the magicians' bombardment. The night before, magicians had needed to hide in the safety shelter, using a defensive position to fight against the beasts. But now, all the magicians had split into small groups, using the safety shelter as a strongpoint to deploy from and hunt the magical beasts in Bo City. The entrances of the beasts were being destroyed in succession. Killing one beast meant one less threat. The whole place was turning into an extermination zone. The extermination had gone on for a whole week, including the sewers being relentlessly cleaned several times over. Maybe a few rats were left behind, but they definitely wouldn't come to the surface. After many days of hunting, Bo City finally returned to a peaceful state. Only, Bo City was no longer the same. There were destroyed buildings everywhere, fallen bridges, and general chaos. Occasionally, a corpse was found by children playing, frightening them. This Bo City wasn't the old Bo City anymore. That evil rain had left many people with a shadow in their hearts. They couldn't sleep, and were even afraid of the rain. The whole city was bathed in gray-white. Many people lost relatives, and tens of thousands died. Even if the city still stood, it was no different from a graveyard. Everybody is leaving. Mo Jiaxing was sitting in the house, smoking with a sad face. Mo Fan's aunt Mo King was still alive, but his uncle's fate was unknown. The confirmed dead list didn't have his name, so it was possible his body was never found. The government says we Bo City citizens will be placed in another city, Mo Fan explained. It'll feel the same as being a refugee, displaced, living under others. I'll just stay here. You guys can go, Mo King said with a depressed face. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.